Zakat on agricultural products. 1. USHR land. 65. The amount to be collected by the state from agricultural products varies. According to the type of land, this amount takes the form of zakat, SADAQAH, HARACH, and rent. Namely, today, the land in the possession of Muslims is primarily divided into the following 4 categories. USHR land. If the people of a conquered country convert to Islam of their own free will, the land in their possession is transferred to their ownership. OR, if a country is conquered by force and its land is granted as property to Islamic MUJAHIDEEN, such land is considered USHR land. The Arabian Peninsula is of this type. These lands are called USHR lands because zakat, known as USHR, is collected at a rate of 1/10 or 1/20th of their produce. 2. HARACH land. This refers to lands that were conquered through an agreement or by establishing supremacy and subsequently granted to the local non-Muslim population or other non-Muslims. The villages of Iraq and their surroundings fall under this category. A tax is collected from this type of land either based on its yield or in a specified amount deemed appropriate HARACH. This is not zakat. 3. Private property. Land. These are land parts that originally belonged to the state treasury but were later sold to certain individuals in exchange for a fee. When the owners of such land are Muslims, their crops are treated for zakat purposes in the same way as the crops of USHR land. However, private gardens surrounding private homes are considered part of those homes. Therefore, no USHR or other taxes are collected on their crops or the fruits of their trees. 4. Public land. These are lands that were once conquered by Muslims and left for the benefit of all Muslims without being transferred to the private ownership of any individual. These belong to the state on behalf of the entire population, and the right to use them has been granted to the people through title deeds. However, the right to use belong exclusively to specific individuals. Those who possess these rights are considered lessors. The specified shares or taxes they pay to the state are also considered rent. Therefore, nitrogen monoxide USHR, or zakat, under any other name is required on the produce of such land. This is because USHR and HARACH, or USHR and the rent fee, covered by this provision, are not collected together on a single piece of land. Land in Turkey generally falls under this category. 66 according to Imam Azam. The nisab is not required for land products. For crop products such as wheat, barley, rice, millet, watermelon, cucumber, eggplant, clover, and sugarcane, whether in small or large quantities, share is taken under the name of USHR. According to the 2 imams, USHR is not collected from crops that do not reach the amount of 5 asterisk, or from vegetables that will not remain in people's possession for a year. 67. If a tide liable plot is irrigated by rain, river, or stream water, its produce is subject to the tide zakat at a rate of 1/10. If the land is irrigated using pumps, wheels, animals, or purchase water for the entire year or more than half of the year, a tithe of 1/20th is collected. Seeds, labor costs, and other expenses are not deducted from the harvest. These products do not need to be held for a full year. USHR is collected at the same rate from all harvests obtained. Several times within a single year, 68 IT is land subject to USHR, but IT is not owned by the property owner if a piece of USHR land is endowed or belongs to children or the insane. USHR is still collected from its produce. 69 zakat is also collected at a rate of 1/10 from honey and khudrate. However, produced on USHR land, seeds that are useful for nitrogen monoxide other purposed in planting, however, are not subject to zakat. If they are intended for trade, they fall under the category of trade goods and zakat is paid on them. 70. If USHR is collected from olive and sesame seeds, nitrogen monoxide further USHR is collected from the oil produced from them later. Likewise, zakat is not obligatory a second time on grapes from which USHR has already been paid. 7.1. The specified shares to be taken from the crops of USHR subject. Land are collected when the crops are fully mature and harvested. IT is not collected before that time. Therefore, IT is not permissible to pay the USHR on crops that have not yet matured or on fruits that have not yet appeared. However, once they are harvested and ripe, the owners may pay the tithes if they so desire. 72(1) should not eat from crops on which the tithes have not yet been paid, nor from fruits still on the trees. However, ITEs permissible to eat them with the intention of calculating and paying the USHR, since one will have paid for what one has eaten. 73. If the USHR on crops from USHR designated land or the rent for private land is not paid on time and is subsequently lost or the owner dies, it must still be paid. 1 vask is 60 isay. This is equivalent to 62,400 dirhams. 5 times this amount is approximately 950 kg 74 from grass cut and gathered from pastures and meadows, from timber trees that grow naturally in mountains considered permissible, reeds, or other naturally grown trees, and fish caught in streams. Nitrogen monoxide tithe is collected. However, just as a tithe is collected from fruits gathered in the mountains, from woodlands, dot reeds, or from land irrigated to produce pasture, as well as from trees, reeds, and grasses cut and sold annually from Muslim-owned private land, a tithe is collected. Also, a tithe is collected from the mulberry leaves found on this land and used to feed silkworms, but not from the silk itself. This silk is attached to the silkworm. Since the silkworm is not subject to the tithe, the silk which is considered a part of it is also not subject to the tithe. 75. If a portion of the produce from tithe-liable land or from domestic land, stored in a barn by their owners, without the intention of trade and sold after 1 year has passed, Zakat is not required on the proceeds, even if the amount reaches the nisab threshold. This is because Zakat does not combine with USHR or rental payments. However, if a year passes after the products are sold and the proceeds are received, then Zakat becomes due. Furthermore, if the amount exceeding what is sufficient to provide the owner of these goods with food for 1 month or 1 year reaches the nisab threshold and is stored with the intention of trade, it becomes subject to Zakat after 1 year. HA's passed.